Welcome back, everybody, to me grumbling about the Wheel of Time, and we're grumbling on about Towers of Midnight, chapters 11 to 22 today. That's a lot, actually, but the book is rather long, and I really want to get it over with. So we'll look at some of the things that are wrong or not so wrong, or well done and not so well done in this one, shall we? Yes, we shall. Oh well, cheers. All right. So, what do we get this time round? We get more Rand, we get more Egwene and Nynaeve and Perrin and Matt and everything a bit. So, we're getting that sense of urgency that everything is closing in towards the actual final battle and stuff. And that's good because I want to get it over with. But there's also stuff that is not so good and not so fun. But let's look at some of those and how these things are handled this time around. There's a bunch of larger scenes. One certainly is Rand returning from his trip up the mountain and now being fully healed and everything. Apologizing to his father, apologizing, or like the equivalent of apologizing to the Aiel for being a dickhead sometimes, or not doing what they want from him. All of these wonderful things, they happen there, and yeah, it's a nice one. So here's the general thing. We also have like a conversation with what's their names, Fail and Perrin, where they kind of talk and celebrate their 1-year marriage, which that year. Time doesn't make any sense in these books, right? But we already spoke about that, so forget about that. All right, so we have that thing, and we have a bunch more of these kind of scenes that feel almost like a classic part of a structured story. Once again, these are like extremely well structured, which I think is mostly the strength, or like the reason of that is Brandon Sanderson. And one of those things that you really want with especially like your epic stories, right, is that brief moment of respite before it gets into the actual, final battle and final travails. It's like you sort out all the problems that you have, all the issues that have like been holding back our characters. Those things get to have to be smoothed over so we can actually concentrate on the thing. And in this case, it's Rand's part there. It's Fail and Perrin talking about all their, problems they had, or when they felt that they failed at something, all of these things. And that's, once again, that's a classic structure thing. It's the same thing we have with, say Frodo and Sam before they actually enter into that final stage, when they have that one final, food and stuff when they're already in Mordor, that kind of thing. When you have you need to have these kind of things to offset that final battle in a way. So that makes a lot of sense. And there's good bits in here and there's bad bits in here. And I want to focus first on the good bit, and then we're going to look at the bad bits. And the good bit is that weird anniversary story for Perrin and Fail. Now, don't get me wrong, there's still stupid things going down in that story. It's like, yeah, sometimes we need to fight so we can make up, and no, that's the way it's portrayed is not exactly a very, good idea for a relationship. But in this one situation, and it's always Perrin and Fail, which the other relationships we don't talk about, we have them actually sorting out their differences by sitting down and talking about it. Sharing their fears and moments of weakness and so forth, and giving that understanding and comfort that a good relationship should be about. Shame about all the rest, but that one, once again, we had that before in Shadow Rising, right? And all the way back in the Shadow Rising when they're in the Two Rivers, and Perrin first confesses the bit about him being, having the wolf eyes and the wolf dreams and the wolf connection kind of thing, and Fail actually telling him that she is, well, who she is and stuff like that. So, once again, nice that we have at least one sort of functioning couple. Sometimes they actually solve their, differences through these kind of things, and that's pretty neat. There's obviously issues there that we'll come to in a moment. Now that part is really cool. Another thing is that I'm afraid Hopper will die soon. And let me explain my reasonings for that. So after having ignored the wolf thing for a couple of books, or almost completely ignored Hopper in that regard, and just have other wolves and stuff, suddenly, from the start of Towers of Midnight on, Hopper shows up in almost every Perrin chapter, every single time. So we renew that bond and renew that, relationship, and make him so that we start to care about Hopper again. Plus, through those endless and partly not really that clever bits and pieces of Perrin learning how to do the wolf thing, we have that scene with the stag, right? When Perrin wants to kill the stag and then Hopper prevents him from doing that, explaining yet again that if you die in the wolf dream as an animal, you die and will not get reborn. So my guess is that sooner or later something will happen where Hopper will actually die in the wolf dream, but we needed that reinforcement through the stag, so we'll actually care about it. Which, why not? I mean, maybe I'm wrong. We'll find out very soon. But this is how it looks to me with the Hopper thing. Because don't get me wrong, I like it. Hopper's cool. Although I think he already had his strongest moment a while ago. Actually, all the way back in Dragon Reborn. There's a scene with Hopper that is just really cool. But yeah, there we are. The not so cool things are more about duty and whatnot, and how Fail feels that she was like a spoilt brat when she went on her trip to become a huntress of the horn and all of these bits. And I'm like, yeah, she was acting pretty spoiled later on, but her choice to actually go and do that, I'm not sure if that's what I would call spoiled, because very much here is all about having a duty and having to fulfill duties and expectations, and that's never really good and clever, right? Don't worry, I mean, I know fantasy has often relied on very archaic ideas of duty, honor, and whatnot. We should probably have a conversation about all of that at some point. It's always been there with Tolkien, with, Robert Jordan, definitely, other authors as well. A lot of it relies on ramming home that we have duties and we need to fulfill those duties, and dying in the line of that duty is actually honorable. It's fucking militaristic is what it is. And I know it's kind of difficult to talk about that these days, what with, a lot of wars going on and whatnot, but no. I'm still not convinced, right? I'm still not convinced that this is how it works, and to call someone who does not just want to fulfill whatever societal expectations, to call that person selfish and spoiled. No, you don't have to care about society's expectations. You should fulfill your personal dream. That's what it is about. And yes, find an inner moral compass and all of that. That's important. But it's you who has to make that decision, and not someone else. So that's something that I don't know, didn't really appreciate that much. But, whatever. As I said, that conversation that Perrin and Fail have was really well done. And for once showed how, a relationship could actually work. Which is wonderful. Shame about all the other bits and pieces, like the astonishment that, maybe sometimes you can actually make up after a conflict without, yelling and throwing shit first. Which, shocking discovery, I know, right? Well, I mean, love is certainly a big theme in these three final books. We've spoken about the weird revelation or epiphany that Rand had up there on the mountain. I feel that's something that we should probably talk about now, because Rand comes back and he's like, I'll take back the exile for Cadsuane because Cadsuane did help me. The weird, like, the length to which the authors go here to actually make it clear that Cadsuane helped Rand find that weird epiphany just boggles my mind. It's like, no. If you'd wanted to make it a bit more clear, there would have been like other ways to do that, but no, Cadsuane did not do anything that people should thank her for, because it will not, like, yeah, there's no learning experience for her. She's like, yeah, see, he's seen reason. No, he hasn't seen reason. There we are. I mean, the other bit there is the religious aspect, and we'll talk about that in a second, because Rand's trip up the mountain and deciding that love is the final thing that we've seen at the end of the Gathering Storm is turned more and more into a religious thing. And yeah. Let me explain. We have that scene later on, like when Nynaeve wanders into that like other bubble of evil, and then she takes one of the Ashaman who has this part of his madness, so to speak, mental health issues, mental illness, and she finally is able to heal him. And that's weak. That is really weakly done. Because it feels like, once again, we need this to happen. We need to make sure that all the Ashaman can be healed from their insanity and like the damage that like channeling has done to them. So Nynaeve just all of a sudden does this. And it's just as bad as her discovering how to heal the stilling and gentling was, right? That's just the same thing, because it's like, all of a sudden she's like, all right, I'm gonna do this now. And through sheer willpower, she then manages to actually do that. And that always feels bad. If I had like a larger explanation on how she discovers specific aspects and whatnot, then yeah, I can see that. If she's done like actual research on the problem, and she hasn't, it's more like, I want this now. And yes, I have found out that compulsion exists, which Rand told her all about. So she's known before, but still she's like, I've learned delving over the last couple of books. Like, how have you learned all of that? It's like, make it a bit clearer where that like sudden leap comes from, because otherwise what you're telling me is that determination and maybe divine intervention are the two things that will lead to people becoming better at something. And I'm not sure that's a message that I personally subscribe to. I don't like that. Anyway, what then happens is that she also tries to delve into, Rand and see how insane Rand is. And we have that same weird, like, dark influence that has driven into his brain, and I'm already not really happy with that description of mental illness per se, but that's another bit for another day, I guess. There's all this power of light that is holding it at bay underneath. It's like, where's that shit coming from? Where the fuck's that coming from? Because I thought that creator of yours, Bobby J. and Brandon Sanderson, is certainly, not taking any interest in the whole thing. I mean, that's where the whole world thing falls in, breaks down. It's like, suddenly Rand gets like external power from somewhere where it's like, how does he get that? I thought the creator doesn't take an active hand in this world. I thought the creator, who's sort of seen as male for whatever reason, but I thought that guy doesn't take an interest. So how come Rand is suddenly filled with all this good power that he got out of nowhere by an epiphany? Like, how's that work with your world building? I don't know. It feels kind of weird. I'm not happy with it. Because, and this I feel is the big problem here. Someone said like in a couple of videos ago in the comments, and I feel that's where we addressed that whole situation with Rand and going up on the mountain, having this like whole revelation and stuff, right? And the true power is maybe a so-called true power is maybe a parallel to the whole temptation of Jesus in the desert by Satan, and I'm not sure, because here's the thing. We see Rand being pressured further down and further down, and trying to become harder and harder and harder to not, break down before all of that. And then he realized that, no, you know what? I'll just sacrifice myself, and it'll all be good. Yeah. I don't know if you need the temptation of the true power there, because it's more like the situation, if you want to make that Jesus parallel, which I think is important to make, unfortunately, right, is exactly, it's more like the realization that you need to sacrifice yourself, which is more like one of those like very late situations in the Gospels, right? That comes after the temptation. It's all about the whole like, I really don't want to do this, and then actually at some point being liberated enough to say, yeah, well, I'll do it, whatever. The temptation does only work if you get like an actual deliberate offer that is combined with a sort of submission. We've gotten those temptations early on, right? In like the first couple of books, when like Ishmael spoke to Rand, or what's her name, Lanfear spoke to Rand. They're like, you know what, join me, we're gonna rule the fucking world together and do all of these wonderful things. That's where the temptation stuff happens. Later on, there's no like deliberate choice. Temptation only works if you have a choice, if you see the choice and choose the wrong thing. So Rand, seeing no choice until he has a revelation, says, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna do it. That doesn't add up to me. And that's I feel what takes so much impact out of it. Rand just stumbles into the revelation. There's no real like act on his part. He's an insanely passive character in that situation. I mean, he does a shitload of stuff before that, but in that situation, he's an insanely passive character who just like is pushed along by circumstances, and everything is just like pushed onto him, including the bad stuff and the good stuff. And then he realized that, yeah, well, whatever, I'll just take all of it. That's it. Now, I'm not sure if that's something I like. I mean, it's a general problem of having like passive characters, but Rand is insanely passive in that regard. His entire character development, not the things he does like running around and shooting people and stuff, right? Of course he's active in that regard, but like when it comes to him growing as a character, all of that is passive. And I guess that's part of the reason why I hate the guy. I mean, not hate the guy, but I think he's not a well-written, not a satisfying main character. He just doesn't work for me, because he doesn't do anything. He has like no real like struggle or anything. He's like, yeah, I've got to get hard, and then he takes his like blue pill, and we'll see how it goes. You know what I mean, right? He's like, I got to get hard and harder and harder and harder, and that's all he does. There's never any like options or him figuring out stuff and saying, you know what, I need to keep that balance, right? The conflict that Perrin is in between letting the wolf control him or staying human is a far better representation of that whole conflict of where you should develop your character, your personality under the pressures of an extreme situation. Perrin is a much better character in that regard, and Rand is just like going down until he hits rock bottom and then gets a revelation and from a divinity that shouldn't be there. And I'm like, well, I don't know. That's fucking boring. I don't know. I don't like it. Also, him now like making everything better just by showing up and having a happy disposition is, I don't know. It's a bit cheesy, is what it is. But it also, kind of follows that whole idea. He has to get like everything clear with himself, has to be in the clear with himself, and then he can go and do whatever he has to do at the end, which is probably, die, sort of. Although I'm pretty sure he will not die. I am almost sure he will not die, because Min has this viewing, right? Spoiler, when she's like the opening, the tunnel in the mountain, the blood on the rocks, which the two people are both dead on the ground, and behind it a smoking pipe. We all know all hobbits and Two Rivers folk smoke pipes all the time. So I assume there's a chance for him to survive, and it'll probably happen. But he has to first be willing to die, I guess. That's sort of the idea there. Which, I don't know. Alright, let's talk about other aspects of it. Well, Perrin, is looking for his conflict with the White Cloaks. We get like a revelation where it's once again that whole like, no one talks to no one, so no one knows shit. And finally, Morghese realizes that Gabriel was Ravine, was an actual, Forsaken, who enslaved her with compulsion, which was pretty fucked up to start with, but we've spoken about that before. And then she has that conversation with that fucking stalker dude, Talanvor. He is, one of the most annoying characters, or worst characters here, because he's pissed off. He's like, I'm gonna leave you, I've done everything for you, and you'll just never see all my love and devotion. And she's like, you know what? I still need some time, because I've just found out that, but I see love when I see it. No, what you see is fucking obsession. Dangerous fucking obsession. That's the problem here. But yeah. So that whole saga continues. We also see that conversation between both Berelain and Fael, which is also like, why? It feels a bit like, once again, Brandon Sanderson trying to fix something stupid that Robert Jordan kind of dug himself into and didn't know how to get out of. That being that whole, like, why build up that whole rumor? That whole stupid rumor of Perrin having, fucked Berelain, to put it mildly. And keeping that, and everyone hating him, and all you do with it is that the two women talk to each other. The one threatens the other, and then let's just pretend to be friends, and then the rumors will die down. I'm like, if that's what you think of as a plot line, I would like to know why. Why? But it feels more like let's finally get rid of that stupid things so we can actually carry on with like proper things again. That's how it felt, and it just like drove home again how unnecessary that stupid like rivalry for Perrin between Berelain and Fael was, because I don't know. It just doesn't work. All it does is still make, Berelain look kind of bad for some reason. Because she obviously never truly loved Perrin. She just wanted the prize. And that leads to that whole weird, twisted conception of true love in these books that I guess would need to be addressed at some point at the end of the series, when we're done with, like, everyone marrying everyone and whatnot. So, yeah. All right. Let's look at other things. Let's look at Nynaeve being tested for, like, full-on Aes Sedai. So she gets into, like, another one of those weird combat simulation kind of ter'angreal, where she has to jump from level to level to do 100 weaves while being assaulted by all kinds of temptations, all set up to make her, do what she was told without, actually giving in to all her, actual humanity and whatnot. And, yeah, it's painful and it's wrong in so many ways, and Nynaeve, I have to say, Nynaeve is certainly acting more or less correctly, in my opinion. I would certainly do the same thing, but, yeah. The argument after it is, like, you need to be able to have a higher ideal and follow a higher ideal and not just give in to your short-term needs and whatnot. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Why would you need a higher ideal in the first place? Also, if that higher ideal is the goals of the Aes Sedai, you should have maybe at some point in the last 12 and a bit books come up with one of those higher ideals of the Aes Sedai, which we still have not had. We're still at the Well, Aes Sedai ruled the world for something, and we don't have that yet. So maybe, and that was like a valid point there from Nynaeve herself, actually, when she's like, you know what, maybe tell me that purpose so I can actually make choices. And yeah, I get that. The problem is that like Nynaeve's position is then one of those like very libertarians, like I decide for myself and no one's going to tell me what to do because I'm the best judge for everything. And while that is certainly true, the consequences that often are like taken out of that position can be kind of weird and problematic if you go too far. It's the basis of every like police action movie of the like last 40 years, where people basically take the law into their own hands because the system will never be able to do it. So yeah, not sure where that's going. We also get like flashes of like Ituralda fighting this horde of goblins, Trollocs, attacking the borderlands, and we're like, what the fuck? But I mean, we kind of saw that from the prologue situation, and it just continues. So we have something there where Rand has to go eventually and do some sort of battle kind of thing in the future. That's solid. I mean, it's combat, it's mass combat. It's not something that I find interesting, and it's not something that but it's solidly done, is what it is, and I'm fine with that. Now let's look at the last part and the more problems of Brandon Sanderson's writing. The last part here is all the things happening with Matt and Elaine. Matt finally talks to Elaine. They make a deal for the cannons and stuff, and all of that is sort of okay, and I'm fine with it, whatever. And then Matt decides that he needs to talk to Birgitte for more information on that mission to save Moiraine. And that part is also solid, right? It's typical Matt stuff. Matt, being attacked by assassins and stuff. That's fine. I get it. All of that's solid. It's nothing spectacular. It's okay. Also sending the Aes Sedai and everyone off to the White Tower. Pretty good. We're getting rid of Julian and Amathera and those people. We don't need to... We're getting rid of unnecessary characters at this point, which... fine. But there's inconsistencies here and stuff that I really didn't like. So when Matt walks up and looks at the tower, the castle of Camelin, the palace of Camelin, he realized that it is a war bunker. And it kind of ties back to what I said earlier about the whole, we've got a situation here. This is like World War II kind of fiction, right? Why would anyone in a medieval world use the word war bunker, for which you need artillery or aerial assaults and shit? Otherwise you don't need a bunker. It's not how that works. We have the idea of redoubts and shit if you want to use something about a fortification there, but why use the word war bunker? It just doesn't fit. And it changes the tone in a way that I don't think really works out. And I'm pretty sure that Robert Jordan would not have used the word war bunker here. There's certainly several such situations where there's suddenly a reflection or a couple of words or a way to describe something where I'm that's... that shouldn't be there. And then there's unnecessary things. Remember how in the last couple of books there were so many informations about how Birgitte is not wearing a sword and really doesn't want to wear a sword, has a bow and all kinds of other stuff, sometimes a quarterstaff or something, but doesn't want to have a sword because she's afraid of swords or thinks that the sword will kill her or whatever. Yeah. Now she just walks around casually with a sword. And it's her viewpoint, and we don't get any further information. Without a comment, he's suddenly having a sword, and I'm why? Why the fuck? It's not even necessary in that situation. She's walking through the palace. She could have whatever. She doesn't have to have a sword there. There's no combat where you need the weapon to be. And that's why do that? Why not just leave it out? Why change characters fundamentally? Because it was built up as this huge thing that Birgitte doesn't like swords. So I don't know. It just feels unnecessary in a way. And I'm not happy with that. I really don't like that aspect. It, yeah, as I said, it was unnecessary. I kind of forgot to talk about like Gavin doing Gavin things, which are still stupid, and he still wants to be Egwene's water, and he has to, understand that there is a difference between her water and marrying her and all that stuff. Like, yeah, it's boring, but we find out that the assassins are actually assassins dressed in black, using swords and knives and being supernaturally fast, which may just be one of the dudes that we know about, the blood knives that were sent by Tuon, and we already know that Gareth Bryn killed one that tried to kill Swan Sanche, and Swan Sanche then saved him by healing the poison on, like, whatever needle or whatever he drove into, that assassin drove into Gareth Bryn's arm. So yeah, there's that. So it's not Missana. So Egwene is once again laboring under a false assumption. And I guess that's something we'll have to live with for a while longer. So overall, the pace has certainly picked up, although a lot of it is still very much pretense of having more things that happen, just having more unnecessary things going down all the time, having more unnecessary action scenes that don't actually further like any character development or plot points or anything. That just put in so we assume that shit is happening, which I've already said is definitely a hallmark of Brandon Sanderson's writing in general. I feel that's sort of all for now. There's certainly more in there, but I can't remember anything more, and I don't want to go into the whole like Nynaeve loves Lan and Lan is more important than anything else. Because, yeah, love. And we'll come back to the love thing and why it is nice and also problematic at the same time. Anyway, hope you liked this. I'll see you for the next one. Cheers.